So here's your null object, and if you right here in the layer in the timeline, you can expand this to go into the transform parameters, and these come with every new layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub this is the X position and the Y position, the coordinates of that null object in the scene, and same with this one right here. So that's just Y, and that's just X. And you can also, if you have your selection tool selected, you can just drag this too. And you can see how the coordinates are changing as it's moving. So that's pretty cool too. So I'm just going to make a keyframe on the position. So I hit the stopwatch, keyframes made at this position right here. I move this forward 2 seconds. I'm just going to drag it to be right here. So now this line has appeared, and that is the animation path. And each of these dots is a single frame. So as it goes across the animation path, each dot is a single frame. There's also this too, if you wanted to mess around with it. These are handles, just like they would be for like a path tool in the Bezier in Photoshop or Illustrator. So you can mess with the path like that if you want to. So I'm just going to give it like a nice kind of wave. If I hit spacebar, hit play, you can't see anything because null objects don't reveal when you play back. You have to they only show up when you scrub. So what I'm going to do, so that you can see this, I'm just going to make sure no layer selected and go to the rectangle tool and just change it to the ellipse tool. It does that same thing it would in Illustrator. So I'm just going to put a circle right near that anchor point of the null object. I'm going to turn off the stroke, and I'm going to make it a red circle. Now, of course, nothing's going to happen until I parent the circle to the null object. So all I have to do is just, because I have this parent and leak column activated, I can just take the pick whip and parent it to that null object. And you can see how that changed to the layer that it's parented to. So now when I hit play, awesome. Okay, so it's pretty boring because what happens is it starts immediately and then it stops immediately. It's very rigid. It's not very, it's just not very pleasing as an animation. And as a motion designer, that's one of your big traits is how do you make this animation just kind of more organic and flowing and more pleasing to the eye. And that's where the graph editor comes in. So if I hit the graph editor, this button, it goes to this. You don't see anything because you have to have a parameter selected, an animated parameter selected to see how the keyframes behave. So here we go. This is how it works. So you're seeing what this is. This is a graph of values. So it starts at this value. The green is the Y. You can see as I hover over that, this is the Y position. This is the X position. So because I messed with the animation path, the Y position mimics that same type of path. So as I go along, so it basically just starts at this value. These are the two dots right here, and it travels across time to these next two values. And that's all keyframing is just setting different values and then how they interact over time in between those two values. So there's one way to look at this graph editor. These are just the values that this object is traveling to and from. But if you right click in this graph right here, you have this selected, edit value graph. That's what this is. This is the value graph. These are values, and they're graphed over time. There's this one that's a lot more fun, called the speed graph. And it doesn't look like the value graph because this is just measuring velocity. So basically, it starts immediately at that velocity and then stops immediately at that velocity and goes to 0. You see right here, here's 0 pixels per second. So it stops immediately. And what you want a nice ease from 0 up to the full velocity and then back down to 0. That's how you start making really nice animations. So all you have to do is select these 2 points. I'm just going to select this last one right here. I'm going to drag it down. So it kind of does this exponential type move where it starts like that and then it gradually over time goes down to 0. Now watch what happens when I hit play. It is a nice little slowdown. But it could be nicer, and that's the cool part. So I'm going to actually just move this keyframe a little bit longer down the timeline. I'm going to pull this handle like that. So now you can see it shoots up to be really fast and then slows down in this exponential way. Now watch what happens. Very cool. So what's happening is it travels really fast. This is the peak of its velocity, and then over time it just kind of exponentially goes down to 0 pixels per second and stops. It's very nice. It's a very nice animation. And so I can do the same thing for the beginning too. I'll drag this one down to 0 and I'll pull this handle out. So now it'll start at 0. Shoot up really fast and then shoot down back down to 0. Just like that. And that's animation. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to kind of even out this, because you could actually do this. I could, if I stretch this out, it takes a long time to start, and then shoots and then stops. This is all just based on your preference too. So I'm going to do a thing just for fun. I'm going to keyframe the scale of that circle too. So the position of the null is driving the circle, and just as the same as the scale would too. As I scale the null object, it scales the circle as well, because the circle is parented to the null object. So I'm going to, at the beginning of this animation, I'm going to hit keyframe right here. I'm going to scale it down to 20%. And you can see how a keyframe's already been set right here. And then I'm going to go forward like to the midpoint. Scale this up to 200%. Now it's automatically making keyframes now because I've hit the stopwatch and now I'm animating. And at the end of this, I'm going to go back down to 50%. So you can see it's not that bad just because the position animation is so nice, but I want the scale to also kind of ease along its animation as well. So I'm just going to drag these like this. Now that's the reason why it's going negative in past 0 is because it increases in scale and then decreases in scale and then stops. So that's why it's doing that. And that's not bad. I'm going to expand this handle a little bit. Expand this one. Awesome. Okay, so that's animation. It's really like just a lot of messing around in the graph editor to really finesse your animations.